Good afternoon, everybody. If I could have your attention, please. It is 5:30, and so we are going to get started on time here this afternoon. My name is Kevin Talam, and I'll be your MC or moderator, however you want to classify that here this afternoon. First of all, it is great to see so many people here. When I was talking to Seth earlier this afternoon, he said, I don't know if we should plan for 20 people or 200 people. And I think we have pretty close to 200 people here this afternoon. This event to fight against fraud is sponsored by a number of local organizations, including Northwest Bank, Farmers Trust and Savings Bank, State Bank, Community State Bank, as well as the Iowa Bankers Association and the Spencer Police Department. They have collaborated to better educate all of you, we as a community and as a public, to help fight against fraud so that you don't become a victim. So how about a nice hand for all of our banking institutions? And if you're wondering what's going to happen here this afternoon, we have a guest speaker that I'm about to introduce. After that, there are two individuals in this room that have volunteered to give a testimony and to share their story of some situations that happened to them. And then after that, we have a panel that we will invite up here on stage. And if any of you in the audience have questions that you would like to ask, we're going to ask you to, once again, please write those down on the pieces of paper provided on every table. And if you do have a question, hold it up. Somebody from one of the banks will be over to collect your questions, and then they will be read to the panel, and we will do our best to answer those here this afternoon. A lot of you might be old enough to remember the old saying that there were only two things to be certain of in life, and that's death and taxes. But in the world that we live in today, there's a third one, and that is falling victim to fraud. Regardless of who you are, how old you are, where you live, what you do for an occupation, every single one of us will be targeted for fraud to try and get money or time from us. And we can't stress enough that tonight we hope that everybody will walk out of here a little bit smarter, a little bit wiser, and know what to watch for, what to pay attention for. I guess if your gut is telling you that something isn't right, or if a red flag is waving, it's happening for a reason, and we need to put a stop to fraud in the future. So thank you for being here and for educating yourself, and together we can help educate others as well. Our keynote speaker tonight is Jenica Lensmeyer. She is the Vice President of Marketing and Industry Relations at the Iowa Bankers Association. Prior to her current role, she spent over a decade in association advocacy and government relations. She is passionate about finding effective ways to influence leaders and telling the story of Iowa's banking industry. Lensmeyer has been with the Iowa Bankers Association for over 8 years. She is a graduate of Iowa State University and holds a master's in public administration from Drake University. She serves on the Innovate to Motivate Advisory Committee, representing the nation's most experienced corporate and association public affairs professionals. Lensmeyer grew up in West Side, Iowa, and is passionate about economic development in rural communities. In addition to her career involvement, she enjoys spending time with her husband, Brandon, and their 3 children. She is an active community volunteer and currently serves on the board of both Variety, the Children's Charity of Iowa, and Junior Achievement of Central Iowa. So would you please give a nice welcome to Jenica Lensmeyer.
Well, thank you, everyone, and thank you for being here tonight. I know it's kind of a bummer topic to talk about, but you all deserve credit for showing up. This is the first step in preventing fraud from happening, is knowing what to look for and how to protect yourself. So we're going to start with a question. Hands held high, don't be shy. How many of you have received some sort of message that was trying to get you to fall for some type of fraud? Yes, all of us. Aren't we so lucky? And they just keep getting better and better. So it can be really difficult to know if it's fraud or not fraud. And the different types of technology that have evolved over time make it much easier for them to target you. You know, they're going to target me in a much different way than they might target you. They're going to find things that you're interested in and try to use those as ways to get you with a certain type of fraud. They're going to use people you know to try to pull at your heartstrings. They even look for obituaries to find who may be in an emotional state that they might be able to take advantage of you easier. So being aware of the different types of fraud that there are and how to protect yourself is really the first step in protecting yourself from losing your identity, dollars, etc. So we're going to start with a little bit about the Iowa Bankers Association. So we are the trade association for Iowa banks. 97% of the banks in the state are members of our association. So we represent 256 community banks around the state. We do a number of different things, government relations, compliance, we provide education for all of our bankers. We do marketing for them as well, and then we also have an insurance and a mortgage company. So, all right, so what you see here, baseball stadium, right? So you might say, well, what relevance does this have to fraud? So there was a study that was done by the Aspen Institute and the American Bankers Association that showed that 57,000 Americans are scammed every single day, which is enough to fill a baseball stadium. And they are robbed of enough money to build that stadium, which is approximately $430 million being stolen every single day. So when you look at fraud, the FTC reported that fraud losses last year in the US topped $23.7 billion. Though some estimate that that number could be as high as $158 billion. So there are reported fraud losses, which very obviously are the ones that are reported, and then there are a number that aren't. And that's for a number of different reasons, but the estimate is $158 billion. So how does this happen? A lot of times people who have fallen victim to fraud might feel embarrassed or don't want to share it with others. We encourage you to actually do the opposite. You should never feel ashamed. Some of these different types of fraud are very sophisticated. You might not even know that it is fraud, and we'll kind of get into that. But we encourage people to always share, educate, let others know what has happened to you, because chances are if it's happened to you, it has also happened to someone else. So there are a number of different types of scams and fraud trends. So I'm just going to quickly go through these. Phishing scams, of course, we've all heard of those, especially if you use email. This is when you receive messages with a link to click on. Romance scams, so that is online dating apps. And I know if you're in the audience, many of you are probably saying, well, I don't use online dating apps, so this won't happen to me. I will give you an example. It happened to me. I'll give you an example in a couple slides and kind of explain to you the different routes they can take in a romance scam. Fake prize scams. We all wish we won the lottery, right? These happen often, a lot of times in conjunction with a higher dollar amount. So when the jackpot is high, these scams get higher. So they will claim you won the lottery, sweepstakes, a gift, but then say, well, we need your credit card number, or we need your social security number in order to give you the money, or you need to pay tax on this. So this is one we see quite often. Investment scams, so trying to trick you into investing your money and promising, significant returns. Government imposter, this happens all the time, where they will pose as the IRS, Social Security Administration, law enforcement, other government entity. This is really a scare tactic, right? No one wants to be called by the IRS. And so they use this as a way for you to give up funds. Impersonation scams, so they pretend to be someone you trust. Maybe that's your boss, maybe that's your grandchild, maybe that's your son or daughter. Maybe it's your neighbor, but they look into who is someone you might trust and use that person's voice to get you to act. Job offers, a lot of us have probably received these where, you get an email that says, oh, I saw your resume, you're the perfect fit for this, you could make $500 a day. Those happen often. Fake distress, so using severe and urgent financial need of a close friend or family member, and then payment apps. So for those of you that are familiar with and use apps like Venmo, this can happen where you think the money is going to the person you sent it to, but it actually is not. So all things to be aware of. There are a number of fraud trends that are specific to text messaging and social media. Package delivery issues, they'll say, this is USPS, we cannot deliver your package until you click on this link. Those are all fake, by the way, do not click on those links. Or you receive a text from your bank claiming there's been a change to your account. Call your bank before you click anything when it comes to those. And then romance scams, we'll get into that, and the investment scams, which are also called pig butchering. Horrible word, I know, but they call them that because they build a relationship with you first. These go on for months and months and months. They build a relationship with you first and then start taking your money. And oftentimes it's very high dollar amounts, and people lose that money because they feel that they have such a strong relationship with this person. And then toll-related scams, which is one of my personal favorites because we don't even have tolls in Iowa. And I get them all the time. But it can happen, right? You travel to Chicago to go to a Cubs game and you drive, if you're like me, you drive right through and you're like, well, I'll figure out how to pay that later. And so, they might catch you in the moment and you might think, oh shoot, I didn't pay that toll. Maybe it is real. So all things to pay attention to. All right, so we're gonna jump into some examples here. So we'll start with the toll. So these are messages that you might receive that are the toll scam. So at first it says, your vehicle has an unpaid toll past due. Please pay the amount to avoid any excessive late fees. Pretty obvious that that isn't real. The link is kind of crazy, and it's just kind of different. Then I receive, this is your final notice. Your toll payment is now overdue. You have to pay by this date. And then they try at the bottom to do the HTTPS, which means secure, iowatolls.gov. So a little more believable, except that we don't have tolls here. But people fall for these every single day. So really when you get messages like this, make sure you look at each of the different areas, the text, the link, the phone number at the top, because most often text messages are going to be scams. Okay, so this is the romance scam I was telling you about. So oftentimes you think, like, this only happens with online dating, right? And the person on the other end isn't real. People fall in love with someone that doesn't really exist. But they've also gone deeper and are doing things like this now. So, full disclosure, happily married. I received this the week that we had a conference. So the IBA had a big conference. We had a lot of different meetings going on. I received this after the conference. So, we have members across the state. This obviously isn't an Iowa number, but we have associate members too that are from across the nation. And so when I received this, I thought, oh, that's kind of strange. I don't know the number. I'm not going to worry about it. But you could see where this would go bad, right? If I would have responded and said, oh, who is this? Oh, it's Joe. I'm with, this organization. Don't you remember me from the conference? And then you can see where this would go, right? And so these types of things happen.
Can you read that?
Yeah, it says, can we have dinner tonight? So it doesn't say, anything crazy, but that's how they start the conversation. So all things to be aware of. You have to be really thoughtful in if you're responding, all of those things, because I know it is hard to not respond or to just hang up, but they are collecting all of your information. So even a short response, you're giving them more. And they'll keep trying. So it's important to make sure that you just don't respond. Here's a bank one. UBI of Iowa alerts, hello, $760 debit charge was made from CVS. Not recognized, visit to stop payment. This is obviously not from my bank, but you will receive these. I receive them all the time. I think it's because I work for the Bankers Association, and now they're targeting me. But I get them weekly probably that are, we saw a charge come through, verify, click this link. And it only takes one click, right? One click and it allows them access to everything. So here's a recruiter example. So this is what I was talking to you about before with the job postings. So we came across your profile, we think you're great, we're offering flexible part-time. This isn't too good to be true, right? Like we would all love to work part-time and get paid twice as much. But that's not how life works. And so people fall for things like this. And they're not asking you to click anything here, they just want you to respond. And then they'll reach out to you in other ways. This is a new one. How many of you have grandchildren or children that play sports? A lot of you? Okay, so this just happened in Muscatine. You'll see that if you can see it. It's kind of hard to see for you, but this is the Muscatine Police Department. Essentially what happened was there was a sports team scam. So they sent out a bunch of information that they were going to create a sports team called the Muscatine Vipers. They had tryouts, kids tried out, made the team, paid for tournaments. They show up at the first tournament, the team doesn't exist. It was all fake, all the money's gone, never registered with the leagues, nothing. So this is how far things are going, right? Like this is happening in our communities, and they are thinking of ways to get to specific people. Like my kids play club sports. I would easily fall for this, right? You can see where this would happen. All of your friends, all the parents, all the parents, like, oh, are you on the 5%? Yeah, I am. Are you? Yeah, we have a tournament, all fake. And they use apps for everything to communicate. So scary things are happening, but you can protect yourself just by being vigilant and paying attention. Okay, so this was sent to us by a bank in Western Iowa. This was a scam that went around their community. Does anyone know what this one is? So it's an Amazon package that gets delivered to your house, but you didn't order it. So you open it up and it says, oh, here's your leggings. Thanks for your order. If you need to return, just scan the QR code that's circled here on the front. So, people receive something they never ordered, they think, oh my gosh, did I pay for this? I need to make sure I return this so I can get my money back. But you were never charged in the first place, and then you scan the QR code, and boom, that's what happens. Yes. So, this takes some effort to be delivering fake packages around communities trying to get people to click on QR codes. Cyber fraud is a whole other animal. I would just say be as careful as you can going into the holiday season, especially if you see advertisements for things. If those Nike shoes that your grandchild wants are on sale for $18 and they're normally $180, you're probably not ever getting those. Like you can pay for them, but they're probably not coming in the mail. But this happened to one of my really good friends last year. So she has the list of what her kids want saved on her computer. And so all of a sudden on Facebook, all the ads start popping up, for what's on the list. And so she ordered a couple things that never came. Paid for them, never came. They're coming from somewhere overseas, never showed up. It was all a scam. So make sure that when you're ordering things, you're ordering them from legit sites. Try not to go through social media to get to your purchases because you just never know what's on the back end of some of those sites. Also, kind of within cyber fraud, something to pay attention to is identity theft. Identity theft leads to a number of different types of fraud. If they steal your identity, they can now apply for credit cards in your name. They can open accounts. They can apply for a loan. They can sell your house. Things like that can be very scary for people. So avoid identity fraud if you can. And there are a number of things you can do to protect yourself. But remember too that that's the importance of having a local bank you can trust is they know it's not you, right? And that really does matter. So rely on that group in the back. Okay, so if something happens and you feel like, whoa, there's something out of my control, I didn't do that, talk to them about it because they have a number of resources to help you. Okay, so this is the animal that has changed everything. On fraud, for better or for worse. They're just always one step ahead, feels like. Artificial intelligence, so AI as often referred to, great tools, like it can do some really amazing things, but a lot of the things that it can do are not in our best interests. So you'll see here, as technology continues to evolve, so do cyber criminals' tactics. Attackers are leveraging AI to craft highly convincing voice or video messages and emails to enable fraud schemes against individuals and businesses alike. These sophisticated tactics can result in devastating financial losses, reputational damage, and compromise of sensitive data. And that's coming from the FBI. So here's where we are seeing it. Creating false documents. So criminals are using AI to create false documents, photographs, videos, forms of ID, applications, things like that. And then they will use deepfake media, like voice cloning, to make fraud and scams be even more realistic. So in the interest of time, I removed this part of the presentation, but we did an experiment where our CEO, which many of you may know him, he was previously the Lieutenant Governor, Adam Gray, he spent about 10 minutes recording his daughter's voice. And we purchased an AI tool for $18, I think it was. And in 5 minutes, we cloned her voice into a scared, panicked voice that needed him immediately. And it sounded just like her. And it took us hardly any time to do it. So what you have to remember is, we're all posting, right? So whether that's a birthday party on Facebook, they only need a little tidbit of someone's voice. We were talking about it before. Like the two of us, it would be so easy. I have a million videos online, and his voice you could find anywhere as well. And no one would know the difference. And so the most, I would say the best thing you can do to protect yourself, for those of you that have grandchildren and children that call you often, have a code word. So have a family code word, whether that's butterscotch, Twinkies, whatever it is. Don't make it obvious. Don't post how much you love the Cyclones and then make the Cyclones your code word. But think of something clever that anytime they call, you receive a call and you're wondering, you can ask them what the code word is. Because honestly, that's about the only way that you're going to be able to tell if it's actually them. It is really hard to tell. Without hanging up and calling them directly, they can mess with the caller ID, they can clone voices, they know exactly what to say. So it's really difficult to tell. So have a code word that everyone knows. And to give you an idea of how powerful AI has been, so phishing scams, right? So any type of link that they put in that will download malware, traditionally they've been successful less than 1% of the time. With AI, they are successful 54% of the time. So, it is, before it used to be, it came from some wacky, email address, and you knew right away, that's not real. That's just not how it works anymore. I'll give you one quick example. We had worked with a caterer, and we received emails from that caterer with, our order and the invoices and things like that. Their email got completely compromised. Someone logged in as them, had full access to everything, collected payment, and they never received it. And it came straight from them, all the same things, the correct invoice, the correct order, everything. So you just have to be so diligent to be able to catch these text scams. I'll just quickly, synthetic identity theft, something to be aware of. They are really using AI to blend real and fake information to make an online persona that's based on a legitimate individual but not an actual individual. And then they use that information to create, they'll use, for example, they'll use a social security number to create a fake name, address, and date of birth with that social security number. So another type of identity fraud. And we went through this, the voice and video cloning. So what can you do to protect yourself, your family, and your business if you have one? Like I mentioned, create a secret code word. Make sure your family members know what it is. Make sure that you check with them often and make sure they still know what it is. And if they don't do that, make sure they verify that it's you. Trust your gut. If it seems too good to be true, probably is. Make sure you verify. Always verify. If you have no one else to verify with your bank first. I'm telling you, we see fraud every single day. Every single day. And if it starts up in Spencer, it usually makes its way south and then over east. So it's usually a path. They usually don't just hit one community and stop. So chances are, if your bank hasn't heard of it, one of our banks has. And we educate on fraud all the time and what's going on and trends to watch for and things like that. So trust them. Use them as your guide. Limit your online content. I know this is so hard. We live in such a digital world. And sometimes for those of you that have careers where you have to kind of put yourself out there, this is a really difficult thing to do. And we all love Instagram and Facebook, and we get to see each other's photos and all those types of things, but just remember that whatever's out there is available to anyone. So be careful what you put out there. And then add a trusted contact to your account. You can talk to your bank about that. There are also a number of different things you can do. Try to eliminate using checks. I know checks are so popular, once were popular, but the thing is if you think about it, right? Let's all think for 1 minute. You're putting your full name, your address, your bank, your account number, the bank's routing number, and your signature, all on one little sheet, and putting it in the mail for any fraudster to grab out of the big blue box. Put anything in the big blue box? Those have universal keys. Did you know that? So fraudster gets a hold of the key, they can open any of those blue boxes, take out all the checks, and they can order checks under your name with your account number. Oh yeah, because why would we put it in the blue mailbox when we can put the red flag up so everyone knows it's in there and come and get the check? I mean, it is kind of silly when you think about it. So consider not using checks if you can. Banks have great bill pay systems and things like that can eliminate a lot of fraud if you go that direction. And I know all of these kind people would be happy to get you kind of on the right track. But the federal government is moving away from checks for a reason. There's just so much fraud. So be mindful of that. I know it's not ideal for some of you who are check writers, but I promise it'll be okay. It's worth it to protect yourself. It's worth it. And last but not least, trust your local banker. I know that it can be embarrassing to fall victim to a type of fraud, but the sooner that you act, the better. Once the money's gone, it can be very hard to get it back. But there are instances where there are things that banks can do to help. So don't be afraid to say something. Even if you see something, tell your local bank so that they can educate the rest of you on what's happening in your neighborhood. Like I said, the types of fraud are so targeted now and so specific to the individual. But chances are, if it's happening to one of you, it's happening to others. So make sure that you talk to your bank. And if they call you and say, hey, we noticed some strange activity on your account, trust them, right? You know, they wouldn't call you if they didn't think something was up. But you've taken the first step in staying up to date on what's happening, staying educated, be vigilant, verify, always verify, and try to protect yourselves and your families from fraud. And the last additional tip I have is, if you can, lock your credit. That's one key way to avoid the identity fraud. You know, lock your credit. It is not hard to do. You can unlock it at any time, but that is a good way to protect you. All right. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Janika Linsmeyer. Like me, are you all going to sleep really well tonight, knowing all this information? But think of it this way, you're better informed. The bad guys that are going after us, they get smarter, but so are we after education like this. I do want to remind you that if you have any questions, you may have some questions now after listening to her presentation. Again, we urge you to write those down and then hold them up. One of the bankers will be by to pick that up, and then we'll be answering those with our panel here in just a moment. We have two volunteers who have said they would like to give a testimonial of some real life experiences that they went through, and we're going to do that right now before we go to our panel. So I'm going to hand the microphone off to this person right here.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Linda. My husband and I have a Airbnb, we called it. I do not have it on Airbnb. Airbnb is a good site. It just started charging people that wanted to stay guests more and giving me less. So I went with Furnish Finder. We've had good luck. I've been doing it for 5 years. Mostly I've had medical people, travel nurses. Kevin keeps an eye on the driveway for me. This man approached us through Furnish Finder. My phone number is on that site. And he did approach me, and he said, I'm coming to town, I'm a contractor, I'm gonna stay 3 months at your place. And I was like, okay. And, you know, many red flags, but I was so naive and so trusting. And I thought, okay, I'll do this. And this one particular day, this had gone on for a couple weeks, and he never called me. Flag number one. I think you should always talk to your guest. And he wanted me to run to the bank and get some money. He had sent me a check for almost $5,000. And I thought, oh gosh, you know, we'll get that in the bank. And I went to the post office to get the money orders. And he was a little bit annoying, red flag number 2, that he asked me, well, can this be done right now? And, you know, he was very urgent. He wasn't moving in until September. But he, I was at the post office doing my thing, and then I thought, a lot of money, you know, so okay, I talked to the lady at the post office, and she said, how old do you know him? I said, I don't. And then she said, I don't think we can let this go through. You should go to your bank. He kept texting me, and I said, we need to visit in person. We need to talk. Well, I can't get there because my job cannot make time to come to your home until I'm ready to move in. And he said, and you know, just, I'm such a Christian person, I thought, are you telling me this? If you are, but he just would, he was kind of relentless. And I went to the bank, and they said, well, that check is not going to be good, Linda. goodness the bank said that. But I said, what? You know, I was just I could not believe this would happen to me. And they let me, you know, we put the check in the mail. The next day, 2 more almost $5,000 checks came. I didn't even touch those. I went to the police with those. I did have to go to the police department and file a police report. And I had to break off contact. There was no more contact. They suggested I just, you know, get rid of his number or delete it. Which, man, I was mad at him. I wanted to, like, hold it, but, you know, how are you going to do that? But anyway, it turned out the check on Friday then did not clear. So that $4,995 came out of my bank, and thank goodness Farmers Bank, all of me, I mean every bank, they are so helpful. As I was leaving tonight, my husband got a call that his card had been, and you know, what do we say, you know, compromised. And, so it's just, it can happen. I did not lose any money, but always get their name, get their address. I mean, they, you know, Furnish Finders kind of just between you and them, but they have some scam items that you should be aware, checklist, you know. And we really not had any problems, but I will tell you, our last guy gave us a bad check. But it wasn't for much, you guys. It was fine. I just was so hurt. I'm like trusting, and I thought, well, I just can't believe. I was looking at the bank. The girls were like, you know, I'm just like, you're kidding. Who would do that? But it's right here. Another dear friend of mine just lost a lot of money going to look at a house in Ames. He met with the couple. He gave them the down payment, and then they ghosted him. There was no house. So it does happen, and it's sad. Thank you.
Thank you, Linda. Okay, and we have a second person. Are they over here somewhere? Right over here. Okay, I'll make my way over there.
That's what's good about thinking my name's Linda too. I keep it's like they're finding all the Lindas in the world. My name is Linda Dialocker. I live here in Spencer. Sorry. My name is Linda Dialocker. I live here in Spencer. And back on May 13th, it was a Tuesday afternoon, my husband and I were shopping up at the Walmart in Spare Lake. We drove up there specifically to buy a garden hose that they didn't have here. And while we were there, his phone kept ringing and ringing and ringing, and I was getting really annoyed with it because he never answers it. And on the way home, it continued to ring when we got home, and I finally said, let me have your phone, I'll answer it. And it ended up being the scam of our life. Person on the phone, it's about 4:30 in the afternoon, and it was a lady, and she said her name was Mary with Bass Bank in Texas, where we have an account. We had a pretty hefty savings account going there. And she said, did you take $5,000 out of your account today? Of course, I was shocked to get that call, and they said no, because they always called his phone number from the bank if they needed anything. I said, we did not. And she continued to talk and say, well, you know, your account has been compromised. You need to call the Federal Trade Commission right away. We need to get on this. And she offered the phone number to me, and like a dummy, I took it and called that number, because she said you need to call it before 5 o'clock to get them started on this. I fell for that hook, line, and sinker, which is just kind of embarrassing because, gosh, I've been in law enforcement for years, retired. Couldn't believe I was so gullible and did that. One of the front people at the Bass Bank in Texas had told me if you would have just hung up that phone and called us directly and said you have a Mary in your fraud department, we could have stopped that. But I didn't need to do that. They were rushing me to call before something else happened. This turned out to be several days worth of just madness. They said how they were, our bank in Spencer, which we bank at, we had an account at U.S. Bank, but also at Northwest Federal, and said everything about us. They knew everything about us, our account numbers, our social security numbers, our cell phone numbers, our emails. There wasn't anything they didn't know, and they just wanted to verify, is this right, is this right? They knew all this stuff. So I'm believing I'm really talking to someone that knows what's going on. Well, once I called the what I thought was the Federal Trade Commission, the man on the phone seemed totally legit. He says we need to contact an agent in Nebraska, the FBI, the local agent down there, and get this. we need to do a scan or a sting on these people because you've got 2 banks in Spencer that are taking advantage of you and they're emptying your accounts. And I mean, you could hear him dialing a number, you could hear somebody pick up the phone and say it was an agent at the local, office in Nebraska, all kinds of things. He gave me his name, he said his name was Patrick Adams. He gave me a phone number, I'm writing all this down. Long story short, they wanted me to just take it easy the rest of the day. They were going to call me the next morning on what we were going to do. They were going to do a sting at the Spencer Bank and get the teller, supposedly the teller who was involved in this. And I thought about going to my bank and saying something. I thought about going to the local police department and asking them about this, and I didn't. I just believed it. So they had us running, doing all kinds of stuff the next day, and thank God, I was on my phone at that time, my cell phone. We don't have a home phone any longer. My husband's cell phone rang. I looked at it, picked it up. It was Danny, at that time Dora, now Frank, calling me from Northwest Bank. And she said, Linda, and she said who she was. And I didn't know her personally at the time. But she said, I think you're being scammed. Are you in any danger? There's something going on. Or are you just at the bank in Milford? And this guy had told me everything to say. Your bank's probably going to call you. Make sure that you sell this and tell him, yeah, you're helping this guy out in New York, that you own a home there. You're going to have it shingled and all kinds of stuff. He had everything down. It didn't seem like he was reading anything. He just seemed so legit. And Danny said, Linda, you're being scammed. And I couldn't believe it because this guy says to me on the other phone, let me hear everything. Just keep your phone on, let me hear this all. And she finally said, Linda, stop lying to me. Tell me the truth. I think you're being scammed. You need to hang up if that guy is on the phone with you now and come down and see me in person. Come to our bank just down the street. You'll know who we are. You won't wonder who you're talking to. So I hung up the phone. And if it wouldn't have been for Danny persisting that I do this, I think we would have been out a lot of money because they had already tried to open 2 $25,000 loans, or take out 2 $25,000 loans. They had tried to take out 4 different things out of the Northwest Bank and do like PayPal, gift cards, and just all kinds of stuff. And Danny had, I think that day, kind of a blur now, but at that time she worked several hours with us that day. We sat in her office and she helped do everything. She even helped me call Social Security and let them know what's going on to stop everything there, and IVERS because we were retired, and it just went on and on for days. I was calling everybody from our local Black Hills Energy to the Spencer Utilities, we had to change bank accounts, checking accounts, emails, phone numbers, you name it, we were changing it. And I spent many days on the phone doing that. So it's finally kind of come to an end. Thanks to Northwest Bank, we didn't lose any money. Thanks to the Basque Bank out in Texas, they closed up that account for us and sent it to Northwest Bank, so we had things locally and I knew what was going on. And the guy out there, his name was Colin Cunnington or something like that, and he was in the fraud department, and he just said the best thing you can do is when you get a call like that, doesn't seem, I don't care how rude it seems, just hang up the phone and just directly call the number you have to make sure it's somebody actually calling you from there. Who cares if it was them and you have to call back and whatever, just do that. Well, in the meantime, this turned into quite a fiasco because he had gotten a new cell phone and a new phone number, and we had even taken our computers and phones out to automated network, AMP, automated network professionals out west of town. They bugged our computer and our phones, and they said my phone was fine. He wanted to get a new phone and a new phone number, so we did. I didn't. And we had a mail appointment coming up in Rochester for him the following Monday, that coming Monday. And so Saturday afternoon, we were sitting at home, and I said, I'm going to just try calling this new phone number to make sure everything's working before we head up there for a couple days. So I called his new phone number, and it rang. He's sitting 4 feet away from me. We were both in our living room and watching TV. The phone rang and rang. He had his phone on him. I didn't hear it ringing, and pretty soon a woman picked up, and I said, who is this? And she hung up the phone immediately. So I couldn't hardly believe what was going on. I'm telling my daughter about this later in the evening, and she says, I think you need to call Verizon customer service and tell them what happened. Somebody obviously has his number. Well, later that night, I think it was about 9:30 at night, and
I did call customer service. And it was the number I had in my phone. I'd had in my phone for years. And I called them, and it prompts you to say, are you calling about the phone you're on now? So I had to say no. Are you calling about a different number? And I pushed yes. So then they want you to enter the number you're calling about. So I entered his brand new phone number. And the minute I hit the last digit, a man came on the line and said, I'm going to, I think, destroy you. I was pretty scared. I just couldn't hardly believe somebody could take over our phones. Oh, come to find out, Verizon had got on with a customer representative of theirs in Costa Rica on Saturday or Sunday, and had spent 2.5 hours on the phone with him trying to figure out how they could possibly have his, take control of his phone. And they found out that these scammers had somehow, when he changed phone numbers, got his new SIM number from the phone, and they were able to do what was called call forwarding. So anytime he made a call, they could intercept it. Anytime somebody tried to call him, they could intercept it. So that night when I put the new phone number in, that's when they came on and said that. And just before I hung up the phone, they had started to say, I want 100 thou, and then I hung up because I was so shook up. Called the local police department, reported it. We'd already reported the scam from Dave, earlier that week, but then called them about this. And the officer came over and took a report and everything. But we had, I had no way of knowing where these people local. I mean, they knew everything about us. They knew that he had went to U.S. Bank on that Tuesday that we got that call, and had to work with somebody down there because he couldn't get on the bank account at home on the computer. So he went down there. They seem to just know all these things about us. That's why I believed it, hook, line, and sinker, that this was not a scam. This is true. But if it weren't for Danny and the training she's had and the bank backing her to do this stuff, I think we would have probably lost a lot of money that week. Still worries me because I could be talking to my daughter on the phone and I hear something in the background, and I'll ask her right away, did you make that noise, or did you just hear that, or whatever? And it still worries me that they have somehow can get on our phones and hear our conversations. There's nothing to, about our conversation that could be worrisome, but maybe sometime I will be talking to a bank or somebody and they'll have that information to be able to get on. I don't know. We changed cell phone companies, but we just couldn't seem to feel safe staying with where we were at, so we switched over to T-Mobile because they have a corporate office here in town. Nobody else has a corporate office. They're all, anytime I had trouble over all this, Verizon told me, we can't help you, go to the corporate office in Mankato or Sioux Falls or Sioux City or Fort Dodge. That's a 2-hour drive no matter where we went. And it was just every time I turned around it was that. So we just finally got enough of this. Switched. So we had somebody here in town that was a corporate office, got new phones again and new phone numbers. Now it's finally kind of dying down, but it's always going to be a worry. I just don't think that's going to change any. While that program was going on, and you were talking about the package fraud, it made me think of something that happened a couple of years ago. We order a lot of, we have pets, and we order a lot of things from Chewy. And I got a package in the mail. I didn't order it, but it was a 6-pack of canned cat food, and we have cats, so I'm thinking, what's going on? It wasn't ours, I didn't order it. It would have been a free gift. But I called them and said, we didn't order this, you sent this to us, but it's not ours, I didn't order it. Well, the lady started helping me, and before that phone conversation was over, it seemed that somebody got into our account, and we were ordering several 100-pound bags of dog food and all kinds of stuff. It was several $100s. And I said, we can't order any of that. We have 2 little dogs. And she got that stopped. So I kind of forgot about that. That's been a couple years ago. But since I didn't order it, I'm glad I called to say, this would have been nice, but I didn't order it. So I don't know. It's a worry. That's all I got.
Thank you to you both for sharing your story and giving us a testimonial. Okay, so now we have come to the point of our program where we are going to do a Q&A. Many of you have written down around some questions that will be answered by our panel. Before we do the questions, I'm going to pass the microphone and we'll have everybody introduce themselves and what organization they're from.
I am Brianna Dean, and I work at State Bank.
I'm Tracy Wilkerson, and I'm at Farmers Bank. Me again, Jenica, Iowa Bankers.
I'm Lindsay Gatman with the Spencer Police Department.
Danny Brink with Northwest Bank.
Seth McCauley, Community State Bank.
All right, thank you all for being up here. The first question we have is for Seth. Do RFID wallets protect your cards?
So pretty short answer is yes and no. For near field communication devices, it will protect somebody from scanning something right next to you. But for giving your information out of your card, no, it will not. So my wife got me one a long time ago, and I carry it just because I put it in my wallet and put all my stuff in it. But yes and no. I mean, it'll protect some data from a close-by scanner, but that's about it.
Okay, good question. This is a two-part question here, and Brianna is going to answer this one. It says, I have 2 emails on my phone, and it says that I'm running out of cloud storage. Is this a scam? And I haven't opened it, and I do pay Apple a fee a month for the storage. And then number 2 is, if you delete email from unknown addresses, can you still be scammed? So Brianna, you've got 2 of them here.
First part of the cloud storage, again, look at your email. Jenica talked a little bit about it too. Look at who's sending it, what the email address is from. So look at those normal red flags. Otherwise, you can always take your phone to your provider and ask them about cloud storage. Otherwise, bring it to your local bank. I'm sure there's plenty of people there that use cloud storage and pay for it as well, so it never hurts to double check. And emails, if you delete it without clicking on anything, yes, that is the right thing to do. They cannot get anything from you just by deleting it. Be aware of the attachments, the links within the email. That's the items you want to avoid. And by just deleting it, not even double clicking on it, that's your best way to prevent anybody from scamming you or getting access to your information.
Okay, this next question is for Tracy. And it asks, if you do a lot of online shopping, a lot of us do, are you more apt to be scammed?
Kevin's right, a lot of us do online shopping. There is risk, but it does give you more opportunity to be scammed, so there's things to be careful about. Make sure you're going to trusted websites. There are sites that will mimic the places that you like to shop, and they are mining your information. So they're waiting for you to put your card number in, and they're going to take it and they'll run with it. Also, look at the terms and conditions. I know I'm terrible about reading those things. It says if you're going to purchase this, you have to click the box. In there, sometimes on those scammy sites, they'll put extra add-ons that's saying you're also buying something for $59.99 a month that you may or may not ever receive. The padlock and the S on the website, the HTTPS, those do help make things more secure, so you'll look for those. As you said, they can be still spoofed. If you get an email offer for something that sounds too cheap to be true, don't click on it. They're also looking for you to just pay shipping. They're mimicking things like Home Depot, Tupperware, and then there's also contests that they'll try to email you. Any of those things, if you have to enter your debit card, they're going to take that information. When you're surfing, if you're going to sites and trying to hit Google, make sure again you're grabbing the right shopping site. If you're on a site and something pops up that says you have a virus, close that immediately, because that is not your software. That's going to be the people that are trying to steal your card information. Those are some ways to protect yourself. Online shopping is okay. Just be aware of what you're doing and don't click anything that you don't trust.
The next question is PayPal or Zelle a secure way of paying for items online? And also Cash App. Are they secure? This is for Dina.
We like to stress that those platforms should only be used to pay friends and family, not somebody that you've never met before, not somebody that you're buying something on Facebook Marketplace. If somebody sends you too much money instantly, you should know it's a scam. If somebody wants to pay you and then you're supposed to send that money back, that should be a red flag. So we always stress use those devices for friends and family to send money securely.
The next question, we have a lot of homeowners here tonight. How do we protect the title of our home from being stolen? And where do we go to keep tabs on that? Jenna, you want to answer that one?
I'll try. So this kind of comes down to identity theft, right? So this is going to be something that falls into that bucket. It is a very popular one right now. I think in the last couple weeks, I've gotten no less than 7 text messages of, are you still selling the property at, whatever location that I do not own, and so I just delete them. But it really comes down to protecting your identity. If you think about it, if you can keep your identity secure, fraudsters will not be able to do that. They won't be able to change all the paperwork into their name. They won't be able to apply for a loan under your name. But this is where your relationship with these folks really becomes important, because they know it's not you, right? So typically, they are going to contact you if something seems wrong or different than behavior that you've had in the past. And so really the best way to protect yourself from all of the homeowner types of fraud are, if anyone reaches out to you that isn't your bank, don't communicate with them. We, at an event just like this, this actually just happened to someone and they lost thousands of dollars to this type of fraud. So don't answer those messages. Only communicate with your bank about these types of things, and make sure if they call you and say, hey, we noticed something, that you're paying attention to that. But also, on the locking your credit, when it comes to home ownership and things like that, to check your credit score, all those things need to be unlocked. So if you have them locked, you kind of know if someone is trying to steal your identity. And I know that there was a question about how do you lock your credit. The bankers might have other recommendations too. My personal favorite is the Experian app, because it pulls all of your credit information together, and you can very easily log in with multi-factor authentication, of course. You can see all the activity on your credit. You can see all your debt. You can see all of your accounts. You can see anything that's been applied for. All of that information is right there, and you can keep it locked, and you can unlock it whenever you need it and lock it right back up. So that is my personal favorite, but check with your local bank too.
Another question for Officer Lindsay. Are people in the Midwest targeted more than other parts of the country? Are we more innocent in the Midwest?
I can't speak for the other parts of the country. All I can say is that fraud and scammers that don't discriminate, I've seen all ages, all locations, small towns, businesses happening all over the big cities. I think what we've discussed here today is build these relationships. Build these relationships with your bankers, us as local law enforcement, if you guys have questions, come to us, ask us first before you do anything. Unfortunately, a lot of times by the time you guys may come to law enforcement, your money is probably already gone. There may be some chances we could get that back, but I just was doing a little research too, and last year, Spencer PD alone had over 100 calls for fraud. This year, we're well over 70 calls for fraud already. And we're talking tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of dollars last year for sure. So it does not discriminate.
Another question is, should I be using a debit card or a credit card for my daily purchases like groceries and gas? Danny?
I would say both have their perks. You know, you can use a debit card. We have certain protections. Each one of our banks has some type of monitoring system that's going to kind of track those purchases and send out an alert if something pings that's way outside of your normal. So we're on that. We're going to call you. We're going to send those messages out. We're going to ask if that was your purchase. Credit cards are great. They use points. It really, you know, when you look at safety, if you can enter a PIN, that's always safer. But just, you also have to be careful because there are scammers, that's the word I'm looking for. There's scammers out there that can pick up that card information as well. So honestly, it's a personal choice. You have to do what you're comfortable with. Both debit and credit card have protections and fraud and different alerts. So it really just depends.
And I think we have one more. Does freezing your credit stop title fraud? Anybody want to tackle that one? Seth?
So it's hard to say what really stops the title fraud, and I know that there's products out there and things like that. It's really just becoming a harder target. Be more vigilant, be more guarded, be the last one scanned. Be hard. Don't let people take your stuff. Don't give out your stuff freely. Talk to your local banker. I mean, right now we got 40 of them back there just willing to help. We got several law enforcement officers here just willing to help. Let us help you. You know, if you start getting that pit of the stomach feeling, or just you feel like you are urgent and you need to send money to somebody for something, just take a step, take a breath, and talk to somebody. As far as the title scam, we're hearing more of that because I think it's being sold. I'm not sure. Obviously it's happening, but I think it's being sold more than it's being done at this point. I'm not saying it's not a good product or anything like that, but we just don't see it here. So at the same time, I can't say that it won't happen, but we are not seeing it here locally. But as far as everything else, just be more vigilant, be on guard, be suspicious is the biggest thing, but also just talk to your local people that you can just go see at any point. You know, that's the biggest takeaway that I can get.
We did get a question regarding, you know, what do you do if you know that someone is being scammed right now? The person who wrote this question, I'm going to refer you to the police officer after the program, and we will prefer that you talk with them directly afterwards. So rather than read that out loud right now. Any other questions that have been put in? Two? Is yes a dirty word? And they say that you can hear now. When they say, can you hear me now? If you say yes, is that a bad thing?
That's really funny. Like I said earlier, anything that you say can and will be used against you. So it's better to just not reply. You know, just don't answer in the first place, right? If it's not a number that you know, chances are it's probably a scam, and if it's not, they're gonna leave a message, and you can call them back, you know, but typically, if it's someone that you don't recognize, it's probably a scam, so just don't answer. I mean, since the Iowa Bankers has started having fraud resources on our website, we've had an uptick of 300% attacks to our site. and I get called no less than twice a day for spam of all sorts. So yes, and it can and will be used against you, so it's better just to not say anything.
All right, I think that is going to conclude our Q&A session. And those were a lot of great questions, and I'm sure that as you were sitting through this and listening to a lot of this, you might be coming up with more questions as well. And you're certainly welcome to talk to all of the banking professionals who are here tonight. I guess in closing, Jenica Lensmeyer, a lot of great information. Is there anything that you would like to add? Any final comments for a great crowd here this evening?
The only thing I would say is don't be afraid to not be Iowa nice. You know, we definitely are targeted as a state who is typically very accommodating. I like to say accommodating, not gullible, and nice. And so a lot of times we get the scams that are really pulling at the heartstrings. You heard it tonight from both individuals. So, you know, don't be afraid to not be Iowa nice and hang up. Don't answer, don't respond. That's totally fine to do. And then my last tip would be keep an eye on your accounts. You know, we hear so often people that lose dollar after dollar after dollar, and it might just be $5 a month. But they don't notice because it's not a huge amount, and then by the time it's caught, it's lots of dollars. So, you know, whatever, if you have credit cards, bank accounts, all of those things, keep a really close eye on them and make sure you know what's going in and out of those accounts.
Well, a few thank yous that we do want to mention quickly before we wrap up. First of all, a thank you to SMU Cable Channel 3 for recording tonight. I would imagine this will be broadcast back on Cable Channel 3 periodically in the coming days. And I guess if we walk away with one thing tonight, that is to trust your local bank. All of the individuals who are here tonight that have helped put this on, Northwest Bank, Farmers Trust and Savings Bank, State Bank, Community State Bank, Iowa Bankers Association, as well as the Spencer Police Department. They're here with you, they work here, they live here with you, and they're in your corner and will do their best to help you and protect you as well. So how about a nice hand for all of these people? So thank you again for coming tonight. We appreciate it. And as you leave here, share this information with your friends and family and your loved ones. And together, we have to be smarter as well. And this is a step in the right direction. Have a good night. Thank you.